Okay, so we're in the middle of the sugi of Avelis, going through different halachas. Tonight is no different. We'll give a slew of halachas of Hilchas Avelis. We are on Chaf Aleph on the base. We are 5 lines from the bottom. Tan Rabbanan. Avul Gimel Yom Rishayim. We said the first 3 days are severe, not as severe as the first, but more than the latter 4. The first 3 days, Rishonim Bom B'Makom Karov. If a person comes from a close place, in other words, his siblings or the people that are Mechayv to Mis'abel are sitting Shiva. He is a distance away. He's a distance away, and within the first 3 days, if Mona Imahem, if he is able to come from a close proximity, look at Taisus, guys. Taisus tells us, Makom Karov Pirshu Behaluchas Gedolos Hainu Yud Parsois. A Yud Parsois is again an ancient measurement. There's 2,000 mil to a parsa. So 10 would be what, 20,000. 2,000, right? 2,000 mil would be 20,000 mil. Okay, so that's proximity of Yud Parsois. You'll be able to come, and then you can go. He can count with them. In other words, he doesn't have to count 7. He can be part of their count. If he's not able to get there within what from Yud Parsois, Monel Atzmo, he has to count what by himself. Right. Anything beyond 3 days. In other words, within 3 days, it depends. Guys, within 3 days, it depends. Can he come or can't he come? Beyond 3 days, even if he could come, then he counts by himself. Okay?
Even if a Rechok guy comes?
No, it's a Korov guy. Even if a Korov guy comes after 3 days, then he counts by himself. Even though he was Korov. But Rachel guy, no, Rachel, forget about it. Rachel, sure, certainly. After 3 days, it's too late.
Why can't he count wherever he is?
What? The question is, let's say let's say he finds out a little later. Let's say he wants,
Whenever he finds out.
No.
In the 7 days,
So they got a head start. So in other words, when exactly are you counting? You have different siblings. We're going to see scenarios where different people are sitting Shiva at different times. Does he have to sit Shiva starting from then, or can he do it from when they started sitting Shiva? That's the Shaila. Or can he do it when they started sitting Shiva? Rav Shimon says, and this is the halacha, afilu ba b'yom hashvi mimakom karov, right? Moina imahem. Forget about the 3 days. Even if he comes on the last day, if he was in a makom karov, then he can count with them. Even if he counts, in other words, he doesn't have to sit Shiva. If he was if it was in 10 parsois, and now he shows up on day 7, then what? He would be able to count, but then he wouldn't have to count. Okay, that's Rav Shimon's din. Amamar, again, going back over the Brisa. Amamar, Gimel Yomar Rishonim, Ba Mimakim Korov Moinei Mahem. Again, if he comes from a close place, he counts with them. So Amar B'chia Barabba, Amar B'Yochanan, V'ushiesh Godol Habayis B'Bayis. There's a little addendum you need to go ahead and facilitate this halacha. It has to be that the oldest person is in the house. In other words, the oldest sibling, whatever the gadol is really of machloikas rishonim. But you need 2 things. 1, makam karov. 2, it has to be the gadol's there. If the gadol's there, it establishes that as the place, and he can be mitzaref, and he can go ahead and adhere to the people sitting there, right? And adhere to people sitting there. Now there is a machloikas rishonim when it says makam karov, makam rachaik. Does he know about it or not? In other words, is this whole thing speaking where he heard about it, or he didn't hear about it? In other words, there's an opinion. If he heard about it, then he counts with them. It's only if he didn't hear about it, that's the discussion over here. Or no, it's irrelevant. That is the machloikas rishonim. But where exactly he does here. So, regarding this gadol, halach gadol bias the Beis HaKfaris. The gadol bias goes to the Beis HaKfaris. Now, there's a different opinion. They used to get buried in Eretz Yisrael. They would go from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. That would take a long period of time. Or sometimes they would just go to a Beis HaKfaris, which was not so close by, in a different city. And now the gadol goes after them to burial. They sit in their city. Now, Mahu, what's the din about this gadol? right? What's the din about this gadol? Does this gadol count with them or not? Does he count with them or not? No, he's the gadol's gone. He's not in the house. He goes there. Does the gadol count with him now? So Toshma, Dam Rab Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Afilu holach gadol abayis the Beis HaKfaris. Even if the gadol leaves the house to go to the Beis HaKfaris, Moina imahem, he would count with them. He would count with them. He wouldn't go ahead and start his own count. Fred the Gemara, Moni imahem, Avatanya Moina la'atzmo. It doesn't. We have a brisa saying the opposite. He doesn't count with them, but he counts what himself. He doesn't count with them, but he counts what counts himself. So it's more like kasha. No, it's not a problem. Had the asa begive tilsa. Had the loy asa begive tilsa. If he can count within 3 days, then he counts with them. If he can't count within days, then he counts by himself. But so the gadol goes to the Beis HaKfaris. If he come within 3 days, then he counts with them. If he cannot come within 3 days, then what? Then he counts by himself. He heard the lahu Rav lebnei Hatsalpoini. Rav said to Bnei Hatsalpoini, "This is a great. I don't know. I didn't know about Vundus, but this is a. There is an interesting. Guys, there's a Gemara. This is one of the great trivial questions of all time. What was the name of Shimshon's mother? There you go. The name of Shimshon's mother was Gemara in Baba Basra, Sadik Aleph, I think. It's Hatsalalaponi. So I would guess she had a town named after her. So it says, Lebnei Hatsalponi, the Asu Bigav Tilsa Limlu Bahadaichu, that the one, if you can come within 3 days, you count. The Loy Asu Bigav Tilsa, if you can't come within 3 days, Limlu Navshayu, then you count by yourself. Now, Amalu Rav Lebnei Mechuza, also in the Loy as Lisay Basa Arsa, you who don't go after the body, Michim Hadrisu Apaichu Mibava da Avoila, from the time you turn your face away from the gates of the city, aschilu manu, you begin to count. Now, this is a very fascinating halacha. This is a fascinating halacha. Yeah, this is fascinating halacha. Let's say you have someone who they're going to do the burial. So you're in Bavel, the burial's in Eretz Yisrael, someone goes along, and you're staying in Bavel. Exactly at which point in time do you begin your Avelis? Says Rafa to Mechuza, as soon as the meese leaves the city, you turn around, that's when you begin. The person, on the other hand, who is going to the burial will only begin B'stimas HaGoylo when B'stimas HaGoylo used to put a goylo on top. What we do is we bury. And therefore, the halacha, the people who go to Eretz Yisrael, the ones who stay here in America begin right away, and the ones who go to Eretz Yisrael only begin b'shas the kfura. This is the source for that halacha. Guys, this is the source for that halacha. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Come back. We said over there.
When did you get up? When did you get up?
Huh?
When did you get up? They started, let's say, on a
You get up 7 days. After 7 days after you started.
Day after people here.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the source of that. It's very interesting. The halachas of Avelis are very usually halachas. There's a lot of stuff. This is like just over here. Dun 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 dun. They have you go. They're just one after the other, just like and not too much. Raid about it, not too much raid about it. The little picture was here and there. I shared with my brother-in-law today that fascinating. We had a halacha. We have a halacha of losing a father-in-law and a mother-in-law, and they were part of the Avelis, right? Mm-hmm. If any of you lost a father-in-law or mother-in-law, none of you were part of the Avelis, correct? What do you mean?
I remember it's like when your grandfather, not yours, the person's grandfather dies.
Well, my grandfather died.
Okay, fine, but you're supposed to do some sort of.
That's your grandfather. So we saw the shnia, right? We saw the shnia. Okay, we saw a sheni, but again, you didn't sit. Again, but what about your father-in-law or your mother-in-law? No one does that, right? So it's brought down. We saw that yesterday that you can't force your wife, but you have to turn over your bed, meaning there should be a din of Avelis. So the Ramah says, fascinating. It's fascinating that you're going ahead and being involved in the mourning of your father-in-law has nothing to do with Avelis. It has to do with the covenant of your wife. It's the covenant of your wife. You have no chiyuv of Avelis. It's not your relative. There's no chila veils. What is it? L'kavod ishto. Why is Michael? It says the Ramah. The Michael. That's it. It's not. You don't have to ask the mechila. That it says that we're not noyig ha'idna in this halacha is because they're Michael.
How about the other way?
Right? If they're not Michael,
How about the wife for the?
same thing. Both ways. Same thing. Same thing.
Grandparents, I asked my Rabbi. He told me that I had a wedding. He said you have to ask your father and see if he's
Michael, right? Is that and that's the source because again, it's the din in your father. It's not the din in your grandfather. It's not now you understand that it's not a din in your father. It's a din in your grandfather, not your grandfather. It's your father. You know whether he's Michael. Right? That's so. Again, the halachas and the taisus in over here. They're packed. The halachas are packed again. You should never need them, right? It should be a schus that we learn this parak. You should never have to go ahead and keep these halachas. Rav Shimon said in the Brisa, "Afilu ba miyom hashvi mimakom karov moina imahem." Even if you come on the seventh day, right? You're in a makam karov. You would be that would end it, right? You wouldn't have to keep 7 days. Amar Rav Chia bar Gamba, Amar Rav Yosi ben Shaul, Amar Rebbe, v'hu shebo umatzim menachem etzloi. It has to be that when you came on day 7, you found menachem there. In other words, you had people going ahead and comforting them. If you showed up and the misaskim truck had been there and they took it at the water cooler and the aron, and that's too late. Okay, that's too late. They have to be the chairs have to be there. Now, there's a Gavaldic Kasha, guys. Gavaldic Kasha. Miksay Yom Kikuloi. And when does the 7th day? It begins the night before. So that's pshat. So look at the bottom Taisus, guys. Look at the bottom Taisus on Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. Afilu boy b'yom shvi mimakom karov. Said Rav Shimon, even if you show up on the 7th day, mimakom karov, you're good. Vim taimar v'ha miktsas hayom kikuloi, meaning the night before you're done. So what do you mean you show up on the 7th day? There is no 7th day. V'yesh leimar kigon shaloi amdu adayim minachme me'etzlam. As of yet, there's still what? People there, which is Agamara. V'yesh nami b'perikam d'ksubis birchas avelim basara kol zayin. Birchas avelim is for all 7 days. Umistama hainu b'yoyim. In other words, mistama it's during the day, meaning it's not vayihi erev vayivoiker, and you're going to begin the night before, like the 7th day begins the night before. Dafka, when it says that birchas chasanim is all 7 days, it must be all 7 days. So the din of Miksay Yom Kekula would only be during the day and not at night. Right? Inami yeshlem a mitzvah yom kekula lehavi belayla leinyan shum dava kidamina b'megillah. Right? Perikama the shima layla lav shima hu leinyan shiva nikia. We said at night. Yeah, you need that. We said ain bain, not necessarily ain bain. We said that only what leinyan during the day and not at night. So that would again. This is Yisrael Taisus. This dinner, mitzvah yom kekula, guys, is only when the day mamish, the day lighttime day, not the halachic day. Again, halachic day we always begin the night before. Friday night is Shabbos, but the halach this dinner, mitzvah yom kekula, keeping part of the day that would only be in a scenario where mamish the daytime. It's geshmak. The taisus in here are all geshmak. They're all packed. They're really packed full of taisus. Okay, very geshmak. Right there, back by us. So that would answer the kasha. That the Menachem was still there, or we say we don't say Miksay Mekukula, and the Aruchi Bagam Nam Yesi Ben Shol Amar Rebbe V'Husha Boy Amas Menachem Etzli Boy Rav Anan Ninarei LaAmoid. Let's say the Menachem again, they show up and they're getting up out of their chairs already. Is that considered that you're still in the ballpark or you're out? V'Layamdu, and then it's right. Says Mahu the Teku. That would be we have to wait for Elio to come and answer the kasha. But again, this won't be a kasha anymore. This will be a time where we won't have death anymore. So this is a kasha that will remain unnecessary. Now, Gemiri Chavre and Rav Abba Rav Chia Meir Rav Abba. Try to keep chesed over here. We have a Messiah from the friend of Rav Abba Bar Chia from Rav Abba Umanu, and who was that? Rav Zera. Gimila Chavre Rav Zera Rav Zera Umanu Rav Abba Braid Rav Chia Bar Abba. Say that first a few times. Rabbi Yochanan, the same name of Rabbi Yochanan. Halacha Reb Shimon begamliel betrefis. The halacha is like Reb Shimon begamliel betrefis. The halacha Reb Shimon be'evel. And the halacha is like Shimon be'evel. Reb Shimon be'evel hoda maran. The halacha of Shimon be'evel is the one we just said, that if you show up from a makam korav on the 7th day, you do not have to go ahead and sit your yotza. And the halacha is like Reb Shimon be'evel betrefis. Okay, just a little background over here. Bez Hashem, we have a little while to go to Masech Chulin, And Masech Chulin, the third parak of Masech Chulin, discusses, it's called Elu Treifis. They discuss 18 different treifis that would make an animal, render an animal treif. Meaning, what is treif? Treif literally means what it is, right? It means that he has some type of internal wound that he won't last a year. He won't last a year, and no shechita can matter it. The animal's called a treifa. Toraf literally means ripped apart, because one of the treifis is what is being clawed by a wolf. So if it has a hole in the intestines, it's a treifa. Let's say the hole in the intestines got stuffed from the mucous membrane inside. Is that enough to be considered that a stuffing of it to the animal should be kosher or not? Says Reb Shimon Gamliel, yes, it is. So the Gemara wants to say that now the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel b'treifis. That nan b'nei mei ayin, you have small intestines shenikvu that got holes in them. V'leicha soismason, and the mucus goes ahead and seals them. Kasher ubi kosher, won't be a treifa. Divrei Reb Shimon Gamliel. My leicha, what's leicha? Amrav Kahana, shirka de meya de nafigagav duchtav. You put that, you push it, it kind of squeezes out of the animal. So Amrav, so he said, man who is kedai should be zeicha. The asik va'agmi the shmaitzim pumi demari. I want to hear from Rabbi Yochanan exactly what he said. Is the halacha like of Shimon be'evel and the halacha like Shimon Gamliel b'treifis? So if he was in Bavel, he should be zeicha that this psak emanated from Eretz Yisrael. He should be zeicha to go up in Eretz Yisrael and he had the psak. He saw like when he went up, right? Who the person that was, I don't know, who was Reb Eina, right? What? We don't know. He saw like Ashkechei l'Reb Abba Berei d'Reb Chia Bar Abba. Amalei Amar halacha Reb Shimon Gamliel b'treifis. Amalei. I'm not in a lachan. I said no, the opposite. Reb Shimon be'evel mai. I'm like plucked in. That's machlokes. The Idmar Rav Chisda Amar halacha. The halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Yishov on the seventh day. The Chaim Reb Yochanan. The halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Yishov on the seventh day. Rav Nachman Amar ein halacha. The ein halacha, and what's the final psak? The ein halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel b'treifa. The halacha is not like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel b'treifa. In other words, if the mucus stuffs up the hole, it's still a treifa. If it has a hole. If you do show up on the seventh day from a Makam Karev, then you don't have to sit Shiva. Why? Shmuel, what's a rule of thumb? We have a few times in this parak. The halacha when it comes to Avelis, we're makel. We said like Rabbi Akiva. We said like Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Yosef. We different places. We said that the halacha is that we are makel. I did find an interesting Tosfos, guys. If you take a look, I have written on it. Look at Tosfos in Chav Dalid Amid Aleph. The fourth Tosfos in the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. The Tosfos Hachiam Rabbi Yochanan Devar Shebet Sin and Noig. You see that Tosfos? Now in the middle of the Tosfos says Va'afagav the Kaimelon Halach Gediri Amekel. Yeah, you see that? Hanimili b'machloikis shel Tanoim. That's dafka machloikis of Tanoim. Av b'milsa da Amaroi loy Omra. Right, we do not say it. In other words, there's a little addendum over here. It's not a carte blanche din across the board that when it comes to machloikis, you're always going to be makel by avelis. It's only if it's a machloikis tanoim, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon, the machloikis tanoim, then we'll be makel. Amarayim not. I find the Tosfos says that. So because that Gemara is a machloikis amarayim, and we're being machmir. So the Gemara is asking a kasha. How come you're being macha? You should be makel. And is answering the cool is only when it's why it's tanoim. I don't know. Says the Gemara Vaita. I'll call a mason kulon, an old mason. Matchemi tasai, harizem meshubach. You go ahead and you should bury right away. That's meshubach. In other words, minimize the hespedim and get the kfura done right away. That's better. However, al aviv al imay, you should go ahead and keep ma and pa around out a little longer in order to give a proper hesped. Harizem meguna. If you go ahead and you hurry up and bury your mother and father without a proper hesped, zem meguna. That's considered something that's not so nice.
They kept doing his thing as they brought the beer to the cemetery. That's what I'm saying. The more the better.
Those are my mothers. They are my mothers. They're my mothers, but that's a different halacha. They're 7 my mothers. But again, I don't know if that's that. I don't know. Erev Shabbos, Erev Yontif. Look at the Bach, guys. Let's say it's Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontif, and look at the Bach Aleph. Right, the Bach Aleph. Or there's rain coming down on the coffin. Harizem mishubach, to bury them quickly. Right, to bury them quickly. Okay. The whole reason for you're doing a covet of the imay, it's not considered that a lack of covet, not giving them a proper hesped. Again, continuing along. I'll call a mason kulon rotza memayet beiskoy rotza eina memayet beiskoy. If you want, you're sitting avelis. If you want, you can be memayet in your business or not. Al over the imay memayet. On over the imay, you should be memayet. Now, it's a big kasha over here, guys. You're not supposed to do malacha, right? We just had the other day, right? We had the other day that a person should not go ahead and do malacha, right? It says the Gemara on Chaf Aleph, right? Elu devarim she'aval asa behem asa b'malacha b'rechitza. So if it's asa to do malacha, why do you have to tell me over here that you should minimize business? L'chari, you can't do business. So Rishonim asked the kasha. One of the truths I saw very pashut. When it says malacha, it's speaking of physical malacha. Physical malacha. But if you have schayra to sell something that's not physically involved, that you should go ahead and be mamayif. That you should go ahead and be mamayif. And I'll call a mason kul and what's a chaylitz, what's a ein chaylitz. You have an option. There was a kriya felt where you go ahead and bear the shoulder. You would show like this. You would bear the shoulder. I'll call a mason kul and what's a chaylitz, what's a ein chaylitz. I'll avla imay chaylitz. You don't have an option. And father and mother, you have to go ahead and bear the shoulder. There was a ma'aser with a certain god ladar. Shemes aviv upikesh lachleitz, and he wanted to go ahead and bear his shoulder. Upikesh god ladar achesh imoy lachleitz. In other words, and there's a god ladar with him that also lekovid the first god ladar. He wanted to do that as well. The nimna and the oval refrained for loicholatz, so as not to go ahead and have the other person who was accompanying him, who wasn't an oval, doing the same thing. So in other words, he was sensitive to that. So Amar Abaya, God Ladar, you know who he was? Rabbi. God Ladar Shimai was of Yaakov Baracha. Okay, now, think of the army Adarabba. God Ladar, who was in Avelis, was of Yaakov Baracha, and God Ladar Shimai was Rabbi. Now, Bishleim Lamadiyama, God Ladar Shimai, Rabbi was with him, and it wasn't, and the Avelis was what? Was of Yaakov, Hainu de Nimna of Leicholitz. That's why Rabbi Yaakov was Nimna. He refrained from going ahead and bearing his shoulder because of the covet of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Elman Diyama Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha, like the man Diyama, it was Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha who was the Aval. Amai Nimna, that it was Rabbi was the Aval. Elman Diyama Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha, Rabbi was the Aval, guys. And who was accompanying him? Rabbi Yaakov. So what happened? Rabbi didn't want to do it, what? Because of Rabbi Yaakov? 1 second. Amai Nimna. Why did Rebbe not? Fellows, who was Rabbi Yehuda that has Nasi's father? Is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. He was the Nasi. He was the direct lineage from David HaMelech, right? Everyone has to go ahead and bear a shoulder on the Nasi. So why, if you're telling me that the Oval was Rebbe, if Rebbe was the Oval, it means the Nasi died. His father died. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's father was the Nasi. So Rabbi Yaakov would have to go ahead because he also had a din of chaylitz because of that. It's such a good kasha. The Gemara says kasha. The Gemara says look for a teretz. It's a good kasha. Next, al kol mesim kulon mistaper la'achal la'amidyoin. On all mesim, every mace, you take a haircut after 30 days. Al ov val imoy achi garu boy chaveirav. For your mother and your father until your friend starts telling you look lousy. Now, let's say and that's interesting halach, it's true. So, but you have to, it can only be after 30 days. In other words, you can't go ahead and come back from the funeral and goes, boy, you terrible, and you have to go to the barber shop. No, it means that after 30 days, when your friend tells you you're not looking so good, then you always see these people, this seems to be halacha that people are machmerin, right? They want to, they probably want to have their hair long and their beard long and not have their wife tell them what to do. So they're, it's shaloi l'shma, but it seems they do it. BDD haviyovta. Says the Gemara, I'll call a Maisa Kulan on all the Maisa, Nichnas the Beis HaSimcha. You can go to a Beis HaSimcha, La'achal Amid after 30 days. Al Avi V'Alimoy La'achal Beis Chaydash. And father and mother only after 12 months. Amar Rabbi Rav Chana, what time of Beis Simcha are we speaking about? Ula Simcha Mereyos. What is Simcha Mereyos? Look at Rashi, the first in line. Simcha Mereyos. Su'udas Sh'oisin Reyim V'ahuvim Zemzeh. Sudan that friends will make for each other. It's not such a simcha. Aval Suda the simcha, going to sue in a Suda of a chas in a wedding, loy. In other words, there seemed to be a Suda of Reyes where, okay, you invited me over for dinner and I'll invite you over for dinner. So it's not such a simcha, but there be a reciprocation of what of the event. That's the simcha that was speaking about 30 days and 12 months. But a simcha of what? A simcha of a wedding, then you would not be able to go to what? You would not be able to go to. It's only simcha of Reyes. Amar Rabba Rav Chana, simcha Reyes. Meisivei, it says ul simcha ul mereyos lamid yoim. It's mashma that what they're both the same thing. It's a mereyos. It says simcha mereyos. It must be simcha also as a wedding, because if the second thing is reyos, it must be the simcha as a wedding. So the Gemara says it's kasha again for the second time in a few lines. It's a kasha. Amema masni hachi. Amema learned the following way. Amar Rabba Rav Chana. You don't have to wait, you can go in right away. 30 days like Kasha. Pirish. To initiate, to go ahead and say, okay, come to my house, that you can't do. But once, let's say, before you became an aval, you were invited to the other person's house, and now it's just reciprocation, that you could do. Again, to initiate, that you can't do. But to reciprocate from something before Avelis, that you would be able to do. I'll call a mason kulon, kare a tefach. On all mason, you rip your clothing a tefach. Al avval nimoy at sheyigala es libo. You have to rip until you go ahead and reveal your heart. Amravahu amakra. That's why we rip for mother and father on the left side. For any other relative, you rip on the right side. For mother and father, you rip on the left side, which is where your heart is. Amravo Mikra, what's the pasuk that you have to rip a tefach? It says Vaychazek David. Now David, guys, gets a message that Shaul and Yehonason had been killed in battle. Shaul obviously was the Melech, who was the Nasi, and Yehonason was the Av Bezdin. Yehonason meant Shaul was the Av Bezdin. He wasn't just a swashbuckler. He was the Av Bezdin. And we learn out halach from there that you have to write kriya for the Av Bezdin. We learn out halach from there, the Av Bezdin you have to write kriya for. So now, when David finds out that they have been killed in battle, it says Vayichazik David b'begadav. He takes hold of his beged, v'yikroim, and he ripped them. Ve'in achiza pachas mitefach. When it says Vayichazik, is not achiza holding us less than a tefach. So therefore, that's what we learn from David. I call a mason kulin afilu lovish asara chalukim. On all mason, even if you're wearing 10 garments, in a karel, you only you rip the upper garment. I love valimoy if you're ripping if you have layered garment, kareyas kulin, you have to read all of them. However, and Rashi in the Ksav Yad says we're speaking about a suda she'al harosh, with some type of turban that was on the head that descended to the shoulders. So guys, you would have thought since it descends to the shoulders, it has a din of a beget to go ahead and rip for father and mother, but you don't. So I know that. Or else, what's the shaila? What's the shaykhis if it's only on your head? Why would you think you have to rip it? So Rashi is very geschmack. It's coming down. I guess they have like Foreign Legion. Remember the French Foreign Legion? The back, Gungadin, right? Remember Gungadin? Mm-hmm. It was before your time. Come on, Douglas Fairbanks. Don't you remember that? Mm-hmm. Douglas Fairbanks. Why do I remember that? I don't know. Cary Grant. You're talking about a film that took place in the 30s, I think. So it's the same history. So Doc, the same history to me as to you. Obviously, you have less shtus in your head than I do. Now, says the Gemara.
Just later shtus.
Yeah, later shtus, right? You probably can rap. You probably can rap or other foolishness. Okay, anyway, so this thing you would not be market. The Indian din of kriya, both men and women are the same. However, obviously, because of the tznius of a woman, we're going to see the differences. She first rips the inner beged, and then she turns it around. And then she rips the outer beged. So by ripping the inner beged and turning it around, when she rips the outer beged, she'll be covered what on the inside. That should be, again, think about it. You're ripping it, you're turning it around. So now it's like the back is to the front, and now you're ripping on the outside. So you have the back, which isn't ripped from the inner beged, which will go ahead and stop from any exposure that's inappropriate. The karasa selyan. Al kol mesim kulan rotza mavdil kame safa shalo rotza ena mavdil al aviv al imay mavdil. It seems to be the following, guys. Look at the shirt. You could view, if you would take, let's say, a turtleneck, and you would rip it from the hem down, you could make it a V-neck, and it's not so clear that it's a ripping for avelis. So, but for mother and father, you would not have that option. You'd have to rip something more pronounced that's in two. So kami safa would mean like would be beyond the border of the neck. Okay, that, I think it's good. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer kol kriya sheina mavdil kami safa shaloi eni ela karish shal tiflis. Rabbi Yehuda dramatically says any kriya that is not mavdil totally all the way down is one a kriya of foolishness. Bravo, my time Rabbi Yehuda. Why do you have to rip into two parts? Like you can't just rip the neck piece. Why do you have to rip considerably? It says by Elisha when Eliyahu was Oilul Shemayim, it says V'chazek begodav vayikroim. He took hold of his begodav vayikroim l'shnayim kroim, and he ripped it into two rips. And mashma shnema vayikroim any day shein l'shnayim. If it says he ripped, don't I know it's two pieces? Ela shenira kruyim kishnayim. It has to be kruyim kishnayim. That's why Rabbi Yehuda said it's not a real ripping if you just go ahead, guys. For example, if it just ripped over here, it doesn't look like it's too shtiklach. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said that would be what inappropriate. It would not be considered a kriya. I'll call him some kulan again, one after the other, guys. Right? Call him some kulan one after the other. Just like I'll call him some kulan shoyle la'achashiva. Now again, we live in a time where we have multiple garments. No one is going to go ahead and wear the garment that they sat shiva in, right? But when you didn't have multiple garments, it was so after shiva. So it says after shiva, you're able to be shoylo. Kulan shoylo la'achashiva uma'achal la'achashloishim. After 7 days, you can go ahead and temporarily stitch it. And after 30 days, you can go ahead and bring it to the tailor and have it done correctly. However, you can temporarily stitch it after 30, but you can never go ahead and have it permanently fixed forever. The woman doesn't have to wait 7 days. A woman immediately goes ahead and she immediately goes ahead and stitches it if they kfayda because of a covet. You see women avelis, they always have a pin, the safety pin, they pin up the kriya because it wouldn't be appropriate otherwise. Again, so tznius overcomes everything. Said when Rabbi came off from Eretz Yisrael, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, on all mason, if you want, you could rip with your hand, you could rip using a knife or some type of instrument. Allah v'imoy biyad, it has to be with the hand. Now, obviously, it's hard to rip with the hand. What they do is they take a razor blade, they start you off, but then one has to go ahead and rip down. Rashi yad, guys, but mefnim inside, becheder b'fnim. In other words, privately, becheder b'fnim in a private cheder. Then, however, mother and father has to be public. Amrav Chisda v'chein lenasi has to be public; it can't be privately. Meisavei, I'll show you that what a nasi does not have to be private, does not have to be publicly. Like chushvu la'aviv li'imoy. Now we're speaking. There's a mish on we're going to see on Chavav, guys. It says over there. There's halachas over there about a rebbe. You have av bezdin, the nasi, right? Regarding all those things, v'chein. It says over there ul ella like chushvu la'aviv li'imoy. All those a rebbe and av bezdin and nasi are only equal ella le'ichud bavad regarding what? Fixing the beged. My love afilu nasi, that even the nasi what, right, is just Indian what, fixing the beged. But the Indian, the other halachas is not the same. The nasi could be bachutz. So how can you say the chein nasi has to be like mother and father dafka inside? It says, well, no, levami not minasi. So father, the rebbe and the av bezdin, that could be inside. That could be inside. It doesn't have to be outside. And a nasi has to be like a mother and father outside. Nasiya Shachiv, the nasi died. Amalei Rav Chisda Rav Nachman bar Ami. Coffee asisa, turn over, it was a machtesha, some type of grinder. Turn over this grinder, the korma law, stand on top of it, the achve kriya la alma, and show that you're ripping kriya. Okay? Al chacham chaylis miyamin, on a chacham you bear your right shoulder, al avbezdim is small, the left shoulder, al nasi mikan, both. And we continue Bez Hashem tomorrow. What? Thanks.